If you're joining us for the first time, welcome. We do this every Monday night at this time right here. Time we put aside every week to answer questions around international dating and marriage, whatever your questions are. You can send them to us throughout our webcast tonight for the next 60 minutes or so by clicking the green box above my handsome dome. When you click the green box, it's going to send me a question. I'll see the question on my admin panel, and throughout the presentation tonight, we'll take a pause to ask your questions out loud and to answer them for you, all right? So if you have questions around international dating or marriage, anything at all that relates to what we do or what you're looking at, what's in front of you in these great videos of what looks like Odessa footage or Ukraine social footage from within the last year. Any questions around any of that, you should ask by clicking the green box above me. If you're watching internationally, you know that I especially appreciate you very much. So, guys, we're going to talk tonight a specific topic, something that comes up all the time. I don't think we spend a lot of time talking about it, but it's the language barrier itself, and how to meet women who speak English, and how to handle the language barrier, and some things around that. So we'll talk about that in just a moment. A few things I want you to be aware of as we get going. Again, guys, we're watching in the background some video footage from last summer and last fall, video footage of our social events in Ukraine. And we're showing you this tonight because I'm going to be leading a fine group of men, I assume, I hope, I pray, a fine group of men to the Ukraine in July. We'll probably have 50 or 60 guys going to July with us, as we usually do in Ukraine. And we'll have a ton of women that'll be available to come out and meet us at our social events. And it's going to be just the ultimate romantic European vacation. We're very, very excited about that. If you're interested in going to China or Thailand or Costa Rica or some of our other great destinations like the Philippines, we have great tours coming up in August and September and October in those destinations. Actually, our China tour is in November, but anyway, we've got great tours coming up for you throughout the year, and you definitely can engage us and talk to us about any of those destinations. And we'll talk a little bit about China. I think now that I think about it, I think last week I said I was going to talk a little bit about China tonight, and I'm not, but I will do it tomorrow. Excuse me. I'll do it next week, guys, right? So those of you interested in China, we'll definitely talk a little bit about China next Monday night. Tonight we're going to talk about the language barrier and how it affects us in all countries. There's some great video footage from our recent social in China for you guys. We're not cold-hearted. We know you want to talk about China, so there it is. We've got great video footage from China. And actually, we want to do more than just show you video footage from a social in China. I want to help you understand the context of how women come to us in China and what cultural pressures, if you will, what cultural things drive them to us. And yeah, so that's a really interesting topic. When we do our international dating seminars, we talk about that at length. Speaking of which, this weekend, if you're in Salt Lake City on Saturday, if you're in Seattle on Sunday from 11 to 3, I will be doing an international dating seminar in each one of those. It's a free 4-hour event, tons of video, bunches of guys, lots of questions. I'll definitely feed you, and we'll have a very fun, informal time. This is not the kind of I'm going to lock the doors until you buy a timeshare type of seminar, guys. This is just us getting out in front of you, showing you why we do what we do. That really is it. Because quite frankly, I think you're more likely to invest yourselves emotionally and financially into why we do what we do, more so than how we do what we do or what is it exactly that we do. So we just like to get out in front of you and show you great video, break it down for you, talk about what you're looking at in the video, and it help you to envision, help you to imagine yourself in the exact video that you're watching. Because the truth is that these are real events. These aren't staged. These are beautiful women that are coming out. The men are meeting them. Everybody's having an incredibly good time. This is the ultimate fun singles party, and you definitely can be a part of it. If you're sitting there watching me right now, I don't care who you are or what your life circumstances are. Some of you have a lot of money and resources, and you can travel the world easily, and maybe you frequently do. Many of you are just everyday guys, but you've got good hearts and lots to offer somebody. And, this isn't something that you could do every year, but you probably could put enough resources together to do it once, and you want to have an effective time. Good for you. I want to get questions and barriers out of the way so that you can go and meet a real girl. So Saturday, Salt Lake City, guys, and Sunday in Seattle. I think in Seattle, Anna's going to be joining me, my sidekick here from Phoenix. She's great, girl from Russia. She can answer a lot of your questions. She's a little under the weather today, but I think she's going to be joining me in Seattle. So we've got great seminars lined up for you this weekend, guys. Free international dating seminars. You cannot get them anywhere else. They're great information, lots of fun, great atmosphere, and you can meet other guys who are like you, some who have traveled on our programs before, many who are just looking at it for the first time. If you'd like to come to our seminars, I want to make sure I've got proper seating for you so nobody stands up in the back and we don't run out of donuts or whatever it's going to be. So kindly RSVP bud@loveme.com to make sure that I got a space for you, and I'll save you a spot. And it'll be great to have you there this weekend, guys. So Saturday, Salt Lake City, and Sunday in Seattle. How about it? I love this video footage. And when I look at this video footage from Ukraine, I frequently find people that I know, like our great affiliate Helen, one of our independent agency partners, a beautiful blonde who just walked by. This is Kiev. This is our Kiev social. We're just watching guys meet the women, talking and sharing. You can see the body language is very comfortable. Look, they're smiling, and obviously that's not an awkward meeting, right? That's obviously people who are talking to each other, getting to know each other. They like each other. The first impression is great. It's warm and it's fun, and we love that atmosphere. Look at it. It's beautiful. It's clean. It's comfortable. It's classy. It's my friend Marina. We absolutely love to show you guys these incredibly beautiful women because time and time again when I do these socials in Ukraine, I see a lot of the same women coming, and it's just because there aren't nearly enough men. So obviously women come, they like our format, they're going to come back again and again, but I sure would be happy to see them find somebody, meet somebody, be happy, and that somebody's probably you. So you got to get on a plane and go and meet these beautiful women. If you're going in July, guys, I'll go with you. I'll be your tour guide, and I'll take good care of you. And just stating the obvious here in case you haven't figured it out yet, I do in fact know all the good places to eat because that's what I do in Ukraine. All right, so guys, how are you doing tonight? What are your questions? What would you like to talk about? How about if you press the green box above me and text me your question, and I'll see your questions on my admin panel, and I'll be happy to read your questions aloud and answer them throughout the next hour or so as we do our webcast presentation for you. You know, I had somebody send me an email. I was kind of hesitant about whether or not I would talk about this. It's kind of funny, though, in a way, but a very well-meaning gentleman, probably one of our good clients. I really took exception to a lot of the stuff that he wrote about, but he basically said, Bud, you know, I've been watching you for a while, and I hear that story about the guy who stalked the girl in the Philippines when she was going to school, who tracked down her college professor and to find out if she was really in classes when she was supposed to. And, you know, would you do me a favor and just stop beating a dead horse? I was a little offended that I told that story a bunch of times, and my very respectful answer is no, I'm not going to stop telling that story. That's a very important story, and it has its place. Look, guys, I want to make something very, very clear to all of you who are watching me right now. I'm probably not going to be very impactful for the vast majority of you who are watching me. I am probably not going to change much of your lives for the thousands of you who are watching me. That's sad, and I wish it were otherwise, but the truth is, there are only a small number of you who are watching me who are really going to take what I say seriously and follow it through. And get on a plane and go and meet somebody and get out of that virtual reality rut that you're in, settling for correspondence and chat relationships when you deserve a lot more. I have these great discussions with people around me as to why more men aren't getting on a plane to go and meet these women. What else can we do to help bring the reality to them? And over the years, I've come to realize that there are tens of thousands of men who are fueling this whole entire online correspondence and chat industry worldwide, and they're not going anywhere. They're comfortable, and they like being comfortable. Being in love is the greatest honor and the greatest privilege we can experience in our human lives, guys, isn't it? Having true love with a partner is absolutely our highest call, our highest endeavor, and our highest reward. And it would be completely naive and just silly to think that such an endeavor, such a pursuit requires nothing of us. Being in love does require a lot of us. It requires constant work and constant attention and care and maintenance. It requires that we take care of ourselves. It requires that we do the things that are necessary to be attractive to somebody else and not get lazy and not make excuses for doing otherwise. Those things are very, very important, right? And in our hearts, we really, really know that. But that's a lot to ask of some people. And a lot of guys are in that comfortable virtual relationship. Somebody brought the attention of a movie to me that I'm dying to see. I watched the trailer. I've read all about it. I know how it ends. Right? And the movie, I believe, is called Her, and it stars Joaquin Phoenix. And from what I've heard of this movie and what I've seen about it, what I've read about it, that's going to be just incredibly cathartic for me to finally see this movie. But it's about a gentleman who has a virtual relationship with someone who's not real. She sounds very real, but she's not real. And he gets entirely comfortable with his relationship with her, and at some point realizes that he's meant to share his life with a real human being. So I'm not here to lecture you guys. I just want you to know I'm not trying to beat anybody up. Sometimes if I offend somebody, there's a reason I'm offending them. It's not intentionally on my part, but maybe some of the things that I'm saying are a little too salty for some people to hear. But my story is important. When I tell the story of the guy who was stalking the girl in the Philippines, it's because she didn't want to give him her contact information. And sometimes the girls don't want to give a contact information. It has nothing to do with making money. It's just because of their own security. And I think you guys need to understand and know that, right? So are we good? Are we square with that? Good. How much is a U.S. passport, says Howard. I'll sell you mine for 20 bucks. No, I'm just kidding. Howard, my understanding is you can get it in about 30 days and it costs you about 90 bucks, roughly. I believe that's what I saw. You can go to your post office, which is operated by the State Department, who issues passports, and they have an application process for you to go through. So you can go to the U.S. Post Office to start your application if you need to, right? Yeah, okay. Anyway, David says we're having some problems with playback, but I don't think that's going very long, David. So try another browser, my friend. If for some reason I'm looking at it right now, and man, I look pretty good for my age. I got to tell you guys, honestly. So try another browser, David, okay? See if it works. Hope it does. Guys, I want to talk tonight about the language barrier. How much of a barrier is the fact that you and a girl you may be pursuing doesn't speak English? And what are some of the behaviors that you're likely to encounter around that? So, if you will, I'm going to give you a few slides and a few thoughts on that. Been doing this for a long, long time, guys. Many, many, many years. And I've seen a lot of couples get introduced. Met a lot of international men and women who didn't speak English. And of course, a lot of women at our social events who were meeting our clients and just watching a lot of the behaviors around that. And I think the information that I'm going to give you around this is pretty reliable information. So we're talking about the language barrier. I want you guys to remember that sometimes whatever you're reading on the internet about really anything, but about international dating and international women and social events, some of what's created there are just things that are written by gentlemen who had every good intention, but their expectations were just not realistic. And so they're approaching a culture, they're approaching an event with expectations that aren't quite realistic, and they're creating impressions based on unrealistic expectations. And language barrier, I think, is one of those areas. Some guys don't know that we only really have one country out of the 8 that we visit to introduce men to women where the women speak English. Every other country that we go to, a number of the women will speak English, but nowhere near the majority of women will speak English except for one country, and that is the Philippines. If you go to the Philippines, the vast majority of women that you're going to meet do speak English. That's a huge advantage for the women in the Philippines. Everywhere else we go, guys, in Latin America and Ukraine, China, other places in Asia, a certain number of women will speak English. We'll talk about that in a moment. I want you to realize that we have made the conscious decision at some point, we're lonely and we're sad and we're empty without somebody in our lives, and we want to share our lives with somebody. Great idea. And we want to use the technology and the resources that are available to us so we can meet somebody, especially if the somebodies we're going to be meeting are beautiful, alluring, very interested, sincere, marriage-minded women. We want to use the resources and the technology available. So we go to the internet, we use sites, we use chat, we have our tools, and those are tools that open doors for us and make it possible for us to find a life mate. And all that is really, really cool. But the reality is that if we're going to do that, we want to meet somebody whose core values match ours. We want to meet somebody who's here because there are cultural influences that prevent her from meeting a guy like you, a good, reliable guy with good old-fashioned family values and a healthy respect for women, right? We want to meet somebody like that, somebody who values us for who we are and for what we have to offer right now. And all of that is great. If you're going to meet and marry somebody, you definitely want her to share your core values. You want her to fit that basic description. She's reliable, she's sincere, she's lovely. So we can have all of that. That's the good news. The technology brings other cultures and other people available to us. It opens doors for us. But you know, there's always a catch, I guess, if you will, right? There's always a challenge. There's always some opportunity for us in the process. And in this case, we're probably going to meet a lot of somebodies who don't speak English yet. So what are we going to do about that? Are we going to close ourselves off and not go and meet somebody? Are we going to deny ourselves the opportunity to find somebody who's everything that we want in a life mate, but who just doesn't speak perfect English yet? Or are we going to boldly go out there and, you know, maybe put some of the responsibility for the language barrier, if you will, on our shoulders, since we are men who decided we're going to travel as hosts, we're going to travel as visitors, as guests to other countries to meet somebody for courtship. There are lots of ways for us to learn a little bit of someone's, you know, Chinese or someone's Russian language, all kinds of resources, and we'll talk about those in a moment too. But I just want you to remember, guys, it is a conscious decision on your part to go and meet somebody from another country who you hope will share your values and your vision for the future and your idea of love and marriage to a T. But she may not speak English yet. So we got to talk about that and what to do about it. But first, I want to really understand the language barrier itself. So a few of the things that we'll touch upon tonight are going to be, when do girls around the world learn English and when do they use it? Is this something that's ongoing? Is this something that happens throughout their lives? Are there specific periods of their lives when they're learning and using English? And what percentages of women speak English in the countries that are possible for you to go to find a life mate? So how many women speak English in China? How many women speak English in Peru, etc.? We'll talk about that. Why don't more ladies learn English to help their search results? If women are here to find a life mate and that life mate probably speaks English because he's American, why don't more women learn English themselves? Great question. Comes up all the time. I will answer it for you. How do those agencies like a Foreign Affair or our independent agency partners who are working in our business model and our local offices, how do they handle the issue of the language barrier? How do they handle translation and interpretation and, you know, correspondence? So if I'm corresponding, how are my letters getting translated? And if I'm traveling and meeting the women, having face-to-face introductions and going out on dates or coming to the social events, how do they handle the language barrier on my behalf? Then we'll talk about some useful tools that you can certainly utilize to learn English, you and or any girl that you will meet and fall in love with, and we'll just talk about what behaviors to expect from the women when it comes to the language barrier. All right? And what you will find when I'm done with my slick presentation, boys, is that the language barrier doesn't need to be a barrier at all. It is an opportunity, and at times it can be a little challenging. At times it can be a tremendous amount of fun, and at times it can be downright hilarious when you say one thing and she interprets another. But at the end of the day, this is not something that needs to stop you at all. Not at all. And I'll tell you what, guys, if you meet a girl and she really likes you, you meet a Ukrainian girl in July with me on tour and she really likes you, that language barrier is not going to get in the way of the two of you at all. I have example after example after example of guys who have met women who did not speak English at first, who had a great time with said women despite the so-called language barrier. So when and where do women typically learn and use English? And what you'll find is that a lot of women learn English in school. A lot of women learn English in what we would call high school. They learn English in what we call grade school or middle school, and they'll study English maybe at university. And so, of course, in those younger years, those teen years and those young adult years, they're learning English. They're around young people who are also learning English, and they're probably using their English somewhat to some extent. Some of them even work as interpreters or translators here or there. And you have to understand, guys, learning English is a very ambiguous couple of words put together. What does it mean to learn English? If we're talking about being proficient in conversation, being able to understand 80% of what's being said to you, being able to respond to it perfectly, that's something that definitely takes a couple of years to accomplish. A couple of years of dedicated study. That is just the nature of learning a foreign language. So in those early years, in those young adult years, we find women all over the globe maybe studying English in school. Because of that, they know some words, they know some phrases, maybe a lot of words and phrases, and they can speak a little conversationally in English and understand what we're saying, at least some of the time, maybe half the time, as well. The problem is those girls are really, really young. Most of us who are going on romance tours to meet these girls are going to be in our 50s, our 60s, some of us at 40s, some of us in our 70s and such. And so dating girls that are college age or just out of college is really not a practical thing. And so how do we meet the women who speak English if mostly the younger people do? What we find is that as women mature, as they get married, get divorced, have a child, get work, the more removed they are from school, the less opportunity they have to practice that English. And yet we also find that a lot of those older women who are, for example, in their early 30s, early 40s, they remember some English, they remember some phrases, but they don't remember how to speak fluently right away. This is kind of an interesting thing where we meet a lot of women who they've got English tucked away somewhere, but they're a little too embarrassed because they're such perfectionists. And you will find women in some countries like China and Ukraine and Russia, they are perfectionists when it comes to speaking English, so they won't even risk it unless they know they can nail it. We'll talk more about that when we talk about their specific behaviors. A lot of the time when we travel on our romance tours with our groups of guys, we will have these great social parties. You're watching footage from some of our social parties now. And we will assign every guy on our tour an interpreter, you know, a partner, a buddy, a matchmaker, if you will. So every social event, every guy has his matchmaking partner. And her job is to screen out anybody who doesn't really apply to you, and definitely screen in and help you to get to know the women that you're interested in getting to know, the ones that really do apply to you, the ones that are appropriate for you. And most of the time our translators are young adults. They've been to college, they've been out of college for a couple of years. They're probably 24, 25, 26 or so, and they speak English fairly well. And they're very professional and very mature and very reliable. All right. So how many women speak English, roughly speaking, in Russia and Ukraine? You'll find that it's about somewhere between 10, maybe 15% of women in Russia and Ukraine. So that's way less than 20%, right? That's 1.5 out of 10 people might speak some level of English. And you'll find that it's probably a little less than 10% of the women can speak proficient English. Now, that may be a lot of women. You know, if you've got 400 women in the room and 10% of them can speak English, that means 40 women can speak English in the room, right? But that means that a whole bunch of other women who are fabulous and have many, many things to offer a man, many gifts, many treasures that you guys definitely want, may not speak perfect English yet. All right, Costa Rica, Gustavo, our great manager, has told me numerous times that it's probably around 30 to 40% of the women in Costa Rica can speak some level of English, particularly the women who come to our socials. We have a lot of women in Costa Rica. And, you know, for the convenience of the guys, we'll probably prioritize the women who speak English in Costa Rica. I hear the same thing of Thailand, as our great manager in Thailand, Leonard, tells us that, you know, a good number, at least half of the women who come to our socials in Thailand can speak English, because we'll prioritize the English-speaking women in addition to the women that you guys ask us to invite to our social events. So Russia and Ukraine, probably 10, 15%. Costa Rica, Thailand, you might see 40% of the women, maybe even slightly more than that, at our social events there who can speak English. Well, now you've got Colombia and Peru and China. How many women in Colombia, Peru, and China can speak English enough to be conversational at a social event? And the answer is, again, probably 15%. Which means every time you come to a social in one of our countries, you're going to meet some women who speak English, guys. You're going to certainly meet your interpreters. And, you know, guys ask me all the time, but are the interpreters available? I don't know. My answer is ask them. If they say they're available, they're available. And if they say they're not, they're not. But if they are available, you certainly may fall in love with them as long as that's reciprocal on their part. But you may not marry them till the tour is over, guys. No marrying the staff or marrying the interpreters till the tour is over, because I need them. Other than that, go for it. If it makes everybody happy, that works for us. You know, and then of course we have the Philippines, where the vast majority of women in the Philippines speak English. And admittedly, that does make things a lot easier for the guys who are, you know, dating the women in the Philippines. But what happens if you're looking at the Philippines and you see attractive women and they're really nice, but your heart is set on going to Ukraine, or your heart is set on going somewhere else? What do? What you do is go and use the technology and the resources to help you. We completely anticipate that most of you guys are going to meet the majority of women who don't speak English yet, and you're going to need translators and interpreters to help you talk to them. So we've got a great team of translators, interpreters, matchmakers waiting for you, happy to meet you, excited to be working for you, and they can't wait to get you introduced to some girls. And then if you need interpreters to go out on dates, which many guys will, we'll have an entire team of interpreters available to go out and translate for you when you're on dates. And the interpreters do a great job. They have great personalities. They're not going to let the date get awkward and cold and stale and weird. They're going to keep the conversation flowing. They're going to keep you relaxed. They're going to get to know you, get to know her, help the two of you talk to each other, and do a really tremendous job keeping all that information flowing. Question that comes up all the time is, why don't more girls learn English? I mean, if these girls are looking for a husband, bud, and they're looking for a guy from America or Canada or Australia, the UK, an English-speaking country, why don't more of them learn English? And you know, the answer to that, well, really there are two answers to that. I'm sorry. And the first answer is, it's expensive. It costs money. Most of the women in places like the Ukraine or in Latin America, they're on very tight budgets. They're not earning much. They're working hard. They're using all their resources to raise their child. They're saving whatever they possibly can. They just don't have the money to learn English. But the bigger reason, quite frankly, is, honestly, guys, for a woman to join an agency and find a guy who is good and reliable and ready to love them, and he's got a healthy mind and a healthy attitude, that is a little bit like winning the lottery. It really is. And for so many beautiful women in places like Ukraine and Russia and all these other countries that we go to, you know, to find that guy, you know, there's an excellent chance that she's not going to do it. I've said it many, many times. The vast majority of the 40,000 plus women at loveme.com and similar sites are never going to meet anybody. And that's absolutely true. The vast majority of these 40,000 women that you see in front of you on our site are never going to meet anybody. And that's because the vast majority of men who are writing letters to them are not ultimately going to get on a plane to go and meet them. I'm not trying to beat anybody up. Guys get really mad at me when I say that, but you know what, boys? It's absolutely true. So when you see these women in one video, then you see them in another, they came to one social, and then they came to another and another, yep. They'll do that for a couple of years even, because it's really hard for them to meet somebody. If your budget is incredibly tight, if you've got to spend your money on your child or some other priority, and you know, studying English is really an option, does it make sense for you to do it? If you really believe in your heart, you'd love to meet somebody, you hope to meet somebody, you deeply, deeply want to meet somebody, but your opportunities to meet somebody are so limited, would you do that? I think most of the women in Ukraine, most of the women in Russia and other places decide, you know what, I'm a pretty smart person. If I get lucky and I meet somebody and we're happy with each other and comfortable with each other, I'll learn English, or I'll learn whatever language I need to learn in order to be comfortable in his culture. That will take a little bit of time, but we always have a little bit of time because there's always some kind of a visa involved in order for me to come and live with him. And that visa, whether it's a fiancé visa or a spousal visa, is going to take us months to get. And during that time, I'll hammer it. I'll learn English. I really will. I think that's the attitude that the vast majority of women have. Now that's, generally speaking, when women come to an agency, when they join an agency, when they give us their profile, that's the attitude that they have about learning English. Let me meet the guy, and then I'll do it. How do the agencies handle the issue of translation? A lot of you don't know this. This is one of those things that you need to wrap your mind around, and we need to probably do a better job at showing you. Most guys look at profiles of women on our site and you assume that the women came to us via their own home computer, sitting at home, joining our site. And that's actually not true. Some women do, but many women find out about us and come to us by way of one of our local offices on the ground. They actually visit the office to create their profile and go on our site. Or one of our independent agency partners. You know, we have all kinds of them all over the world, actually. A lot of them in China, a lot of them in the Philippines, a handful of them in, a lot of them in China, a lot of them in Ukraine, and a handful of them in places like the Philippines. But we have a lot of these independent agencies. They work really well on a local level. They've got tons of great women, but they have no marketing budget and nobody knows they exist. So their women aren't getting looks. And so they'll come to us, and those profiles will come with them. So how do the agencies handle the issue of translation? I think, honestly, one of the selling points that agencies offer a woman when she joins our site is, look, you don't speak English, and that's okay. Most women don't speak English who join a site like this, but we'll translate for you. So when the guys write to you, we'll translate the letters and get them to you right away. And then we're probably going to want you to respond right away because the guys really hate to be left hanging. We don't want to lose somebody's attention and have them end up writing to somebody else. So we'll translate that letter, we'll get it to you, we'll get it back, translate it, get it to him, and we'll manage that whole communication flow very, very efficiently for you. If anybody's weird or strange, if they're asking bizarre questions, sending you pictures you don't want, you know what I mean, we'll just kind of X that out and just get you the people who are right for you and interested in you. And I'm absolutely sure that agencies use their proficiency with English translation as a selling point to the women who join their agency. And then, of course, when you're traveling and meeting these women, those same agencies will produce interpreters who know the women fairly well and can go out on a date to help you translate and get to know each other and do a really good job that way. You guys good so far? So what behaviors can you expect? You know, there are some behaviors to expect from women. Kind of interesting. Let me go back. What are some of the behaviors that we can expect from women if they don't necessarily speak English? And here's what I can tell you guys. Chemistry is stronger than the language barrier. I have relationship example after example to show this to you. If somebody likes you, if they think you're attractive, if they watch your mannerisms, they think you're interesting, and they want to talk to you and they want to get to know you, chemistry, that attraction, that interest in you is stronger than the language barrier, and it's not going to throw them off. You're looking right now at a man who's talking to his girl at a social, and he's got an interpreter with him. So as you're talking to people, I want you to understand, in this social environment and all of our social environments, when you see them on video, except for the Philippines, most of the people you're looking at, certainly most of the women you're looking at, don't speak English. But we have an interpreter by your side the whole night so you can meet anybody. And then if she likes you and she thinks you're attractive, she's going to tell you that, you know, you're very attractive. I really like that sport coat. I really like whatever. She's going to compliment you. She's going to send you very strong signals that if you asked her out for a date, she would say yes and be really happy. And she would spend a lot of time getting ready for that date and be excited about it and tell her best friend about it. She would be nervous about it. Everything that you want from somebody when you introduce yourself to them. So you'll feel that chemistry when you meet these women in our social events. You'll feel that attraction, and our staff will help you to communicate, to make that first impression. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us about your job. You know, what are some things that you like? What are your impressions of China so far? You've been in Shenzhen for a few days now. What do you think? What do you think of Kiev? How do you like Odessa? And you'll have a very good, fluent conversation that's a little flirty and a little fun. And you'll tell your interpreter, I really love to take this woman out to dinner. Would she join me for dinner? Your interpreter will arrange that date, and away you go. You've got your dates. What you're going to find, guys, is where the women don't speak English, they're going to give you a lot of positive body language. They're going to be looking at you when you're talking. They're going to be smiling. They're going to be nodding your head. Sometimes they do it without even being completely aware of it. But it's all of this positive affirmation that says, I like you, you're interesting, I find you attractive, I approve of you. All of those warm, accepting behaviors that we like to see when we're attracted to somebody and we're trying to get to know them. So you'll get all that positive body language from somebody, and your interpreter will just keep the conversation flowing. You know, the interpreter is usually like an echo in the room, guys. You're talking, you pause, she speaks. Someone answers, pause, she speaks. You talk back, pause, she speaks. So that's just how the flow goes. And you develop a rhythm after a little while, and it becomes quite natural. Here's what you'll find, guys. We talk about the women that are older that knew some English, and that English is tucked away, and they want you to be impressed with them. They don't want you to think they're stupid. They don't want you to have these negative impressions of them, but many women will just tuck that English away for a few dates and wait until they get comfortable with you. You've been out on a few dates, you're holding hands, you're cute, you're flirting, you're laughing at yourself, you're making a few jokes, she's laughing with you, she thinks you're really funny and humble and cool, and at that point the women will start to try their English. And when, you know, we say anything, we may not know how to speak any Russian at all, but we say one phrase and they'll say, oh, you did that very well, you speak Russian very well. Actually, you speak Russian terribly, but you know a few phrases, and they'll give you that positive vibe. And when you do the same thing, if she says, how are you? And you go, you do know some English, you did that very well. We're doing the same thing, and that whole positive reinforcement behavior opens up, you know, the women to speaking more English, which they know, which is tucked away. Some guys take a hard approach to this. You know, if you speak English, we're going to go out on dates and you're going to speak English, and I'm not going to pay for an interpreter. And, you know, you can do that. That's one approach. And I think some people will look at you like you made the decision to come halfway around the world to a country where the vast majority of people don't speak English to find a wife. And I assume that was a conscious decision. So, you know, you probably should expect there's going to be an interpreter involved here or there a little bit. But the reality is, guys, if you take the right attitude, plan, in some cases, to work with a great interpreter who's charming and wonderful, who really likes you and is trying to be helpful for a couple of dates. And then as you get closer to the girl and the walls are coming down and you get comfortable with each other, she won't need that interpreter around. And even if, you know, the two of you are sitting in a coffee shop on Google Translate, on wireless internet, or some other mechanism to communicate together. And there are all kinds of apps and ways to do it. She'll be perfectly happy doing that. I know guys that have dated women, used an interpreter for 1 or 2 dates, and after that they were fine. They were just translating, on Google Translate or a handheld translator or however they could do it, and they were fine. It's not always perfect. Sometimes it is completely hilarious, though, when you try to say one thing. I remember somebody tried to say something in the translator once like, "I've always liked you," and the translator immediately said, the electronic translator immediately said, "I never liked you." So exactly the opposite of what he was trying to say. You have to, it's an art form. It takes some practice, but the point is you definitely can do it. I love this picture that I just pulled up the slide because this is a very typical, first date, second date behavior. Obviously she likes you. She's cuddling up for a selfie. She's going to want to take a selfie. When women in Ukraine, women in China, women all around the world, when they like you, you will definitely know it. If you're scratching your head after a date or two and you don't know if she likes you, she doesn't. You definitely will know if she likes you. And if you know that she likes you, then she's going to hang in there and work around the language barrier with you. Sound good, guys? What do you think of that? I hope you think it's brilliant because I worked on it all day. Not quite all day. All right, anyway, guys, just wanted to give you some perspective around the language barrier. And I can't tell you how many times I've had couples meet each other who did not speak English right away, and they had a wonderful, hilarious time getting to know each other. They really did. So you got to keep an open mind, and you got to go at this with the right understanding of the culture and different influences so you can have a good experience. All right. I'm going to answer some of your questions. And if you come to my seminar in Salt Lake City, my free international dating seminar, 11 to 3, this Saturday, I'll answer more of your questions. And if you come to my seminar in Seattle on Sunday, this Sunday from 11 to 3, I'll answer all of your questions too. RSVP, please, so I can save you a seat and a sandwich. bud@loveme.com. Free international dating seminars this weekend, guys. Good stuff. All right. Can I bring her on a 90-day fiancé to my small town, says Jose. Yes, you can. How do women feel about living in a small town? Honestly, Jose, a lot of women have no problem living in a small town. At the end of the day, the reason they're living in any town in America is because of you, the person that they've fallen in love with, that they can't be without. The reason you're doing a visa and bringing somebody here is because the two of you have fallen in love. You created the love relationship. You nurtured it. You built it. It's wonderful. You've tested it. All good, and you want to be together like any two people who are in love want to be. So, there are great things about living in a city. There are great things about living in a small town. The positives of it's a great small town, everybody's friendly, the air is clean, there's no crime, schools are great. Women will like that. They absolutely will, especially if they're planning on raising a family. As long as you have access to a larger environment they can go to sometime if they feel like shopping on the weekend or just going to the city for a movie, that's all good. Don't worry about that. Robert says, Bud, you mentioned that you have profiled several women that are not getting any letters. I missed that broadcast. Can you give the profile numbers again? I can. Anybody who wants a list of women from Nikolaev, Ukraine, that's the only city I currently have that information available to you for. But if you'd like a list of women from Nikolaev, Ukraine, who are lovely and interesting and fun, the women from this particular partner of mine in Nikolaev are always very popular at the social events, but not getting a lot of letters, guys. And if you want it, write to me, bud@loveme.com. James says, Bud, can you talk about the costs related to food outside the dates if one needs to budget? Absolutely, James. Some dates are coffee dates. Some dates are, coffee and dessert. Some dates are a cocktail at a bar, in which case, you're looking at, what, $10? Some dates are dinner if it's 7 o'clock at night. She's worked all day and she hasn't been home yet. She hasn't eaten and she's starving. That's probably a good time for a dinner date, right? Some dates are, maybe something light. Some dates are bowling. Some dates are a movie. So, food is cheap. We always give the guys, every time we go to Ukraine, I will absolutely point out very specific places that you can go to have an incredibly nice meal, very, very affordably. I won't say cheap, but pretty close to it, with great ambiance. I love those places, and I'll be very happy to point them out to you. We'll probably eat in one of them as a group, just to here or there, just to help you guys get comfortable with some of the atmospheres. But food is always cheap, and there are always lots of options, so you needn't worry much about that. But I think most of the time we're telling guys, if you're going to go out on a few dates per day, spend a few hours together, and have a translator for at least part of the time, you're probably looking at about $100 US per day. And that's probably a good budget. Sometimes you spend a little more than that. Sometimes you don't spend anywhere near that, just depending on what you're doing and who you're hanging with. Again, James is talking about some of the outside costs of the tours, translators, dinner, dates. You know, so I sort of covered that, James. Translators in most places are going to work for about 20 bucks an hour. So if you're, you know, having a translator for a couple of hours a day, you might pay 40 or 50 bucks a day to have somebody translating for a few hours for you. Now, if you meet a girl who doesn't speak English and you decide to spend all day together, obviously you're going to pay a little bit more for translation, at least in the beginning until you get to know her, and then later on you can spend your time together and you don't need a translator. But your biggest expense on a tour is probably translating when you're meeting girls who don't necessarily speak English, because food and dating is pretty cheap and very nice, and great atmospheres and nice places. So we have many, many places that we can recommend to you, James, to help you save money when you're on dates. Everybody likes to do that. There's no point spending 150 bucks on 3 or 4 dates per day if you're not going to have second dates with most of those women, right? Problem is, you're probably going to want to have second dates with a lot of those ladies. Brandon says, very excited to go this July. Brandon, I'm excited for you. Going to be in the video soon. Yes, you are, you handsome devil. I'm going to totally video the crap out of you. I watch every Monday night, and you guys do an amazing job. Brandon, you're an incredibly awesome guy, and I appreciate you very much. I cannot wait for you to be on the tour with me in July. Can't wait to introduce you to some of the other guys that I know who are incredibly awesome. I just can't imagine the fun and hilarity that we are going to have. Eric says, are you guys going to have a tour seminar in Kansas City, Missouri this year? I don't think so. But we'll probably get darn close to where you are, Eric, so hang in there, my friend. Adam, you crack me up, dude. You have any idea how many videos we have? We have so many videos. All right, anyway, David. I love trolls. Love them. David says, what has been so long not being relational kind of... Okay. David says, what if it's been not so long being in a relationship? In other words, if David hasn't been in a relationship for a while and he's not sure what kind of woman he's looking for, how do you pick a trip? That's a great question. If I don't know what kind of woman I'd like to meet, how do I pick a trip? I'll tell you what, I don't think you can. Although, to be honest with you, I truly believe you could go on any of the 8 countries that we go to, any of them, and be completely successful if you're a good guy with a good heart and you've got good intentions. That's absolutely true. So how do you pick a trip if you don't know what you're looking for? Well, so let's talk about that. If we're talking about physical qualities, how someone looks, the physical traits that are attractive to someone. Some guys, for example, like blondes, some guys like brunettes, some guys like the exotic look of Latin American women, some guys like the more European look. I mean, those things, obviously, if they're a priority for you, will steer you into a specific direction. If we're talking about personality traits, I like honesty, I like kindness, I like tenderness, I like romantic and spontaneous, etc. You know, I think you'll find those personality traits everywhere we go. But what you can probably do is do a search engine search on our website. Go to our website and use the search engine, and you have slots in the search engine criteria where you can enter keywords. Enter the word kindness, enter family-oriented, enter romantic, and just see the profiles that come up. Look at those profiles, and where you find the most attractive women, I would probably go there. You know, if you find a certain series of physical traits attractive, if you like the exotic look of Latin America, that's great. That gives you about 4 or 5 destinations to choose from. I don't know, man. Honestly, you can probably throw a dart at the calendar. To a certain extent, guys, I think it is an art form, choosing the right place to go. But I also think that we can overthink it, because the reality is everywhere we go, we have hundreds of women, hundreds of them everywhere we go, if not thousands. In Ukraine, we do have thousands of women who want to meet a guy for healthy, honest, good reasons. There just aren't enough guys to go and meet them. And if you go, you'll have a heck of a time. Adam says, I'm 35. Which tour suits me best for my age group? Adam, all of them. How also are you intent to visit Canada at any time for a seminar? Adam, you know what, my friend? I would love to go to Canada for a seminar. I would love that. We should do that. I need to talk my boss into that, and I think you need to help me. So why don't you write a letter to john@loveme.com and say, John, I'm up in Canada. You know, we have our Canadian brothers join us on all kinds of tours, and it's all about the maple leaf, man. So write to john@loveme.com and say, hey, John, come up and do a seminar in Canada, and I'll bring a friend or two, and maybe that will help me. If I get 1 or 2 guys from Canada to do that, Canada's a big place, obviously, but I could see John agreeing to a seminar in Toronto or Montreal, possibly. Let's give that a whirl. I'd love to. Being 35, man, 35 is great, right? 35 is a great age. You can go anywhere we go. There's no wrong place to go. If you're 35, you have an advantage. You're about 10 to 20 years younger than most of the guys who are doing this. So go for it. I wish we had more guys in their 30s. But the reality is, I think a lot of guys in their 30s that are out there, we're just not financially in a place where we're ready to do this. And but we'll get there. And when you get there, we'll be absolutely happy to host you and have you guys. That's for sure. If I'm wrong, prove me wrong. Go on a tour. Guys, the virtual relationship is an epidemic in our culture. It really is. Tens of thousands of men are settling for electronic versions of relationship reality. And over the years, for the longest time, I just thought there was something that we weren't doing. There was something we weren't showing you. There was something missing from our effort to present the wonderful reality of these women to you. And just so many conversations that we've had in our Phoenix office, our headquarters, if you will, around that. How do we get more guys off their butts to get out and go and meet somebody? And man, it's been a rather cathartic year, but I've become aware that that whole virtual relationship, which gives you what you need, at least what your dopamine in your brain tells you you need, without requiring a whole lot of you, is very addictive for a lot of guys. But as I've said, and I know this is true, there is a day in your future, guys, when you're going to wake up and just be sick of it. And you're going to understand that life is meant to be shared with somebody, a real somebody, a beautiful life mate by your side, who's thankful for you, happy for you, who will lift you up when you're sad, hug you, kiss you, embrace you when you need to be hugged and kissed and embraced, who will give you, the things that a man needs from a woman. When you've had a rough day and you're tired and you're beaten down and you know that she can save you, she'll save you because she loves you. We need that. We need a real life, a real relationship, a real opportunity to meet somebody, and to not settle for the highly efficient, very addictive virtual relationship that so many businesses in this industry worldwide will sell you. What makes us unique is we do romance tours, right? That's pretty unique. We're actually going to go with you to one of our destinations and guide you through an orchestrated singles cruise, if you will, minus the boat. But it's very much like a singles cruise, where a lot of very good people are going to meet each other. Relationships will happen. Romance will definitely happen, as long as your expectations are in a good place. And you will have the vacation of a lifetime, and you'll meet a lot of beautiful women and probably somebody really, really special. And you're watching video footage of that whole thing right now. You're looking at my great friends from the July 2017 tour. And we're in Kherson, Ukraine, and we're meeting women. And you see the guys with their interpreters meeting these beautiful women, and it's awesome. That is such a great venue. We're going to be in that venue in July, that exact venue, having a social in that exact environment, and you can go and be in that video. Now, just so you know, guys, if you don't really want to be in a video, you don't have to be. We'll protect your privacy. You don't have to be videotaped. But the point I'm making is, this is a real scenario that you're looking at. It is a real place, and these are real people, and you can meet them and do exactly what my boys in this video are doing. All you got to do is go. With us. Go with me in July and I'll be your tour guide. All right, so Bob says, I see more than one Ukraine tour. Which one are you on? Right on, Bob. Thank you. I will be on the July tours. So we have 6 cities that we're attending to in July. We have one 3-city tour starting on the 12th of July, which starts out in Kiev, goes to Kharkov, and then Sumy. Sumy is a great little city that we hardly ever go to, and there are a lot of very beautiful and bored women there. And I'll take you there and introduce you to them. And then on the 19th of July, we'll be going down to Odessa, which is a beautiful city on the Black Sea. And we'll start out in Odessa. We'll go to Nikolaev, which is a small city, kind of on an inlet, little bay, very beautiful, about an hour and a half away from Odessa. And then we'll go to Kherson, which is a small city on the Dnieper River as it comes in from the Black Sea. And it's beautiful, guys. It really is. All 3 cities, Odessa, Nikolaev, Kherson, very beautiful. Kiev, Kharkov, Sumy, huge cities. We just love to go. You can go to all 6 cities if you want. I will be leading the tour on those cities. You can go with me, and a good time will be had by all. You better believe it. And so. All right, guys. Got a couple guys asking me which tour is best for guys who are 35. And once again, anybody, anywhere. A lot of women over 45, even 50 that come to socials in Ukraine, asks Bob. I'm early 60s. Bob, good for you. Yes, there are. There are definitely a lot of women in their 40s. They don't look at all in their 40s, but there definitely are. I would say probably half the room is going to be over the age of 30. Half the room will be under the age of 30. And a lot of the men that go on our tours, regardless of their age, are going to be focused on the women who are under the age of 30. And that's fine. They can do that. But for those of you interested in meeting women above 30, women in their early 40s, even in their 50s, they're definitely going to be there. And if you want to invite them yourself from our website, we'll definitely invite them. And you can meet them outside of the socials because we'll call them up and arrange, you know, individual dates for you with those ladies as well. You can totally do this, my friend. And Bob, you know what? If you want, I've got a great friend who's in his early 60s. You and he are probably about the same age right now. And he met a beautiful girl in Kharkov in her 40s. I believe he was 61 and she was 42, if I'm not mistaken, when they met. And they're a lovely couple, and I adore them. And I'd be happy to introduce you to them. So it's my friend Dave, cutting it loose, man. It's always the quiet guy on the tour. That's all I can say. You got to keep your eye on the quiet guy. How we doing, guys? I hope you enjoyed the topic tonight. I hope it gave you a little bit of insight on how we handle the language barrier, how the language barrier is no big deal. It really isn't, guys, honestly. I've had time after time guys tell me about, you know, how they spent their time with women who did not speak English. Maybe had a date or two with them and then did some things together, spent entire days together, just communicating by some other means, usually Google Translate or something like that. Thank God for the technology, guys. The technology makes a lot of things possible. I always tell the story of my friend Don, who met a girl when we were in Mariupol. And, you know, they were in my office, which was a suite in the hotel. It was half office, half living room, half bedroom, whatever. That's three halves, right? And the staff was working really hard, so I kicked them out and bought them dinner. And we went at like 7 o'clock, and then they went home. And I locked, the hotel is such that I locked my room. I locked my hotel room so that nobody would come into it. I got back at 11 o'clock that night. And when I opened the door, I heard somebody laughing in my bedroom, on my bed. And as it turns out, by locking the door, I'd actually, the doors in Ukraine are kind of interesting. I'd actually locked them in. But Don and this girl that he had met, this wonderful lady who was in her 50s, and Don was in his 60s at the time. They'd just been sitting on my bed in my room all night long. Just whatever they were looking at on the internet, they were having a good laugh. And it was an incredibly cute story. This couple just sitting there having a good time. I was a little freaked there for a moment. Fortunately, all they did was sit on my bed, but there they were having a good time. Wow, all the women are smiling and happy. Yeah, thank you. Great observation. It's true. Look, guys, our parties are, we invite a ton of women, but our parties are done with a great deal of class. We do our very, very best. The women understand what's going on. For the women, they understand. It'd be great to come to a social where there are 30 women and 300 men, but that's probably not going to happen. But they'll come to a social because it's well run. You know, it's an event that where we show them some appreciation and some fun, and there's nothing for free in Ukraine. Nobody ever throws a free party in Ukraine. So we're throwing the party, we're allowing them to come. It's not a ton of food, it's a little bit of champagne, it's a nice environment, it's just a chance to go out. These beautiful women that you're looking at, guys, they work 12, 14, 16-hour days, day after day after day. They can't complain about it, nobody cares. There's no OSHA, there's no Department of Labor. Nobody cares. Nobody cares about the women of Ukraine. They care about themselves. They care about their friends, and nobody else cares. And that's the truth. So when we show up and we're showing them a great time in the evening to come out and have a social, have some music, we'll play some games, we'll give them, you can see, some light food, some appetizers. They can meet international men who really appreciate them, who are engaging them and talking to them. All of that is such a fun, interesting, stimulating event for women who are very educated and very sophisticated and definitely overworked. And most importantly, guys, it represents you really well, which is what it's all about. Do we have more questions? Is the social during the day or night? Ron, great question. We don't want to take anything for granted here, right? Well, the reality is most of our socials are in the evening when the women are out of work. And generally it's just easier to throw a social in the evening than in the middle of the day, right? Every now and then we'll have a social in the late afternoon, but for the most part the socials are in the early evening. Usually from about 6 to maybe 9:30 or 10 o'clock, something like that. Here we are looking at our social footage from Odessa, July of last year. Was it last year? No, that's actually, we're looking at Odessa from 2016. How about that, guys? Nice. I love to see these videos. I love to see the men and the women interacting with each other. And I remember these guys very fondly. They were extremely awesome tour mates. Good times. Guys, if you have a few more questions, I'd be happy to answer them for you. Next Monday night, we'll answer your questions, but we're going to talk a little bit about China, and I'm going to give you a little bit of a presentation on the women of China and why they're here and what they're up against and the kinds of things that are happening to them in China that make it really difficult for them to meet somebody. Wait a minute, you'll say, but aren't there like millions more men than women in China? Yep, there are, and yet it's still very difficult for some of the best women in China to meet somebody, so we're going to talk about that, and I'll show you some good stuff behind that so we can back it up with some good evidence for you, and you'll feel good about the information that we're giving you. Hey guys, if you come out to my seminar this Saturday in Salt Lake City, or my free international dating seminar on Sunday in Seattle, I'll give you that information, along with a whole lot of other good stuff, and we'll answer a ton of your questions. RSVP bud@loveme.com, please. Very important question. Sponsoring a wife, if you're from Canada, is very difficult. It takes literally a 6-month to a year period. Do you provide assistance with that? Adam, great question. I'm sorry to say no, we do not. Unfortunately, because we're American and American-based, we're just not experts in or familiar with the immigration process. There really isn't any assistance that we can provide with that. The good news is I can certainly help you talk to guys that are in Canada that know about it, and there are plenty of resources that are out here, and you can definitely do that. So it's not that hard. Getting 6 months to a year, a lot of people feel, a lot of women feel, quite frankly, guys, that having 6 months to a year after you've met and created this relationship, to perfect this relationship, grow the relationship to a place where it really does make sense for her to relocate to your country and live with you, that helps the process. If we could get on a plane and go and spend a week with these women and bring them back to the States or bring them back to Canada or anywhere, 99.9% of them would say, that is an absolutely crazy idea. No, I'm not doing that. Because they're not trying to get out of their country and into someone else's country. It's not all what they're trying to do. So what makes sense is we get to know each other. We make sure this is a good idea. We fall in love first, create that strong love relationship, and then whatever we do after that will be the natural result of that beautiful love relationship that we create together. James says, if you invite a girl outside the city where you're having a social, so for example, if the social was in Kharkov and you wanted to invite a girl from Poltava, is that too far? And the answer is yes, it is. 99% of the time, when you are traveling to one of our destinations, the women you're going to meet at our social events, guys, are going to be from that destination. There are a number of reasons for that. The socials are at night. Many women in Ukraine don't drive. Transportation at night could be sketchy. And Poltava to Kharkov, it's several hours at least. The good news is that you can write to women from another city, and while you're in Kharkov, you could go and visit them in Poltava, or you could ask them to come to Kharkov for a couple of days, buy them a cheap train or a cheap plane ticket. I'm talking less than $100 here, guys. Buy them a couple of nights of hotel or a night of hotel so the two of you can meet. You could always offer that, and on every tour I have somebody who's meeting a girl that way. We were writing to each other. I was going to be in Kiev. I said, come up to Kiev. I sent her a ticket or bought it online or sent her a little bit of money or contacted the agency, whatever I did. She got her ticket. She came. Here we are enjoying each other's company. So that's very doable, definitely. Great question. Thank you for asking it. All of you guys who are asking questions, you got to understand when you ask a question, there are many guys that are out there that are hearing your question and going, wow, that's a good question. I should have asked that. So when you're asking for everybody, and that's really, really, really cool. Look at that, guys. What a great social. That is Nikolaev, I believe. No, it's not. That is Kharkov. I'm sorry. Yeah. So many beautiful women who are lonely and alone, who want to give their love to somebody, and not many guys going to meet them. And there are far fewer men in Ukraine than you have women. One of the things we talk about on our social events, you've got 4 million more women than men in Ukraine, guys. And Ukraine is the size of Texas. That is a huge population disparity, and that is the truth. So what are 4 million attractive women supposed to do, right? They get out there, like you are. They join a website, they put up a profile, they do their best. They'll come to a social where there are 300 women and 30 men. And they'll stand around like these women are standing around, having a little champagne, watching the guys, hoping they can catch your eye when you walk by, hoping to say something interesting, hoping for a date, hoping for an opportunity, that's all, right? And you can meet them. You definitely can. I will be doing seminars this weekend, Salt Lake City on Saturday, Seattle on Sunday, 11 to 3 both times. If you'd like to come, it's free, it's fun, you'll love it. Bud at loveme.com. I'm also leading our next tours to Ukraine, which will be in July, starting on July 12th and then on July 19th. Or what the heck, you can do all 6 cities starting on July 12th and ending on July 28th. I'll be in Ukraine, your tour leader. Can you imagine how much fun that's going to be? Let me answer that for you. No, you can't. But it's going to be tremendous fun. And you want to go and meet these women, guys. Seriously, let's go have great fun. Let's be brothers. Let's have some great camaraderie, some great laughs, memories to laugh a lifetime, and probably the most romantic experience you've had in a long time. Do my very, very best for you. If you have additional questions, concerns, hang-ups, issues, gossip, rumors, NFL predictions, please, bud@loveme.com. My man behind the scenes, my own personal MacGyver, his name is Kirk. He's phenomenal. None of this would be possible without him, so thank you, Kirk. Guys, we'll see you 1 week from tonight. We'll talk a little bit about China and answer more of your questions, all right? So, have a great week. See you this weekend, guys. Seattle, Salt Lake City, right? See you this weekend, and see you 1 week from tonight.